What if your dream vacation turned into a living nightmare in a matter of seconds? June 7th, 2024. Another beautiful day on Florida's sun-soaked shores. For vacationers and locals, the day promised peace and relaxation. But hidden beneath the waves, a deadly predator was waiting to strike. Within hours, 3 women would come face to face with this fearsome creature, and their lives would be changed forever. This is the story of how an ordinary day became a fight for survival for 2 women, Elizabeth Foley, a mother of 3, and Lulu Gribben, a 15-year-old on her first beach trip. It's a story of courage, of terror, and of the strangers who stepped in when the ocean turned against them. Elizabeth, a strong and athletic mother of 3, had always loved the water. She'd run marathons, swam competitively, and found peace in the ocean's embrace. She and her husband Ryan had taken their 3 teenage children, Laurel, Lila, and Dominic, to Watersound Beach, a secluded private stretch of the Florida Gulf Coast. It was their first time there, invited by close friends for a much-needed family getaway. The water was warm, the sky a brilliant blue, and the family enjoyed the tranquility of a perfect day at the beach. It was around 1 p.m., the height of the afternoon, when the beachgoers were relaxed and calm. Elizabeth swam near the first sandbar, about waist deep, her family just a few feet behind. Everything seemed perfect. Families played and body surfed in the small waves, unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. Among those families was Keith Harrison, a neuropathologist visiting with his wife and 2 young sons from Birmingham, Alabama. Harrison and his boys had been body surfing for hours, reveling in the calm, clear water. For the first few days of their trip, the water had been murky, but now it was pristine. Perfect conditions for a peaceful day at the beach. At least, that's what they thought. Elizabeth was wading deeper into the water when she looked down and saw something dark moving swiftly through the water. At first, she thought it was a stingray or maybe just a trick of the light. She turned her back to the shadow and started swimming toward the shore, an eerie sense of unease settling over her. She didn't know it yet. She was being hunted. Then, without warning, the water exploded around her. A bull shark, one of the ocean's most aggressive predators, lunged at Elizabeth with incredible speed. The attack was brutal, swift, and merciless. The shark clamped its jaws around her, striking between her legs as she tried to swim away. Elizabeth was dragged underwater. The world around her went silent. She could feel the water filling her lungs. She surfaced again, and then she screamed for her life and punched at the shark's snout, a desperate attempt to fend off the attacker. But the shark was relentless. With a powerful snap of its jaws, it ripped her hand clean off. At that moment, Elizabeth Foley thought she was going to die. The pain was unimaginable. But amidst the terror, a thought broke through the chaos. A prayer. "I'm not ready to die," she thought. "Not yet. Not like this." But the damage was done. Her hand was gone, her legs and pelvis shredded by the shark's powerful jaws. She was fighting for her life. Ryan, her husband, didn't hesitate. He plunged into the water and pulled Elizabeth toward the shore, her blood trailing behind them. On the shore, her family watched in horror. Her 17-year-old daughter Laurel would later describe the scene as if it were from a horror movie. Her mother's body torn apart, her skin hanging in shreds. As Ryan carried Elizabeth's body toward the beach, the gravity of the situation became clear. She was bleeding out, fast. Dr. Keith Harrison ran toward the scene, not fearing for himself, and then he saw it. A dark, shadowy figure lurking just below the surface. It was still there, still waiting. The massive predator responsible for the carnage hadn't left. Instinct took over. Harrison grabbed Elizabeth and helped her to shore. His hands immediately pressed against her left brachial artery, trying to slow the blood loss. But the situation was dire. Elizabeth was going into shock, and her body was going cold. Further down the beach, 3 friends, Riley Smith, a paramedic, Bailey Mesa, an emergency room nurse, and Abby Judeman, a nurse for a specialist, had been enjoying their own peaceful day. They'd driven all night from Missouri for a girls' beach weekend, unaware that their medical training would soon be put to the ultimate test. As the first scream reached them, Riley Smith's mind instantly knew what it was: shark attack. Without hesitation, she jumped into action. She said, "Are you all ready?" to her friends while grabbing her towel and sprinting toward the scene. Her friends followed close behind, unsure of what they'd face, but knowing they had to help. When they reached Elizabeth, the sight was worse than they could have imagined. Blood soaked the sand around her, and her injuries were catastrophic. Keith Harrison continued to press on her brachial artery, but it wasn't enough to stop the flow of blood.
I see blood all over the water. They just got her on the beach, but her hand is missing.
Oh my God, her legs. Oh God, her butt. She's losing blood very, very rapidly. Okay, her lips are losing color. We need emergency here now. This is bad. We're gonna lose her. I'm not kidding. She's losing blood fast.
The women using whatever they could find, beach towels, shirts, anything to fashion makeshift tourniquets. Blood poured from her severed arm and her pelvis torn apart by the shark's vicious bite. Every second counted. Riley pressed down on Elizabeth's severed arm, trying to stop the flow of blood, and began directing the scene. Abby and Bailey worked quickly, applying pressure to her pelvis, trying to control the bleeding. But still Elizabeth was slipping away. Paramedics were on their way. 911 had been called by multiple people, but time was running out. The minutes felt like hours. The air was thick with tension as the three women worked tirelessly to keep Elizabeth alive. A Navy SEAL joined in and a deputy sheriff bringing some supplies and trying to help as her children stood by watching helplessly, their mother barely clinging to life. Elizabeth herself drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain unbearable, the blood loss overwhelming. A precious lady came up and asked me to pray with her, and I prayed to God, Elizabeth later recalled. I prayed for a miracle. At last, more help arrived. Elizabeth was loaded into a pickup truck and rushed to the nearest fire station, where a helicopter waited to medevac her to the hospital. But the journey to survival was far from over. As the helicopter soared over the Florida coastline, Elizabeth's body was shutting down. She'd already lost so much blood, her chances of survival were slim. The emergency medical team worked around the clock to stabilize Elizabeth. Her injuries were severe. Her left hand was completely gone, her pelvis shattered, and her body was covered in deep wounds from the shark's powerful jaws. Over the next 2 months, Elizabeth would endure 19 surgeries, each one bringing her close to recovery, but the road ahead was long and painful. For weeks, Elizabeth remained in the hospital, battling not only the physical trauma, but the emotional scars left behind. Phantom pain from her missing hand haunted her every day, a constant reminder of the attack. Her body, once so strong, was now fragile, and the road to recovery seemed endless. But amidst the pain, there was gratitude. Gratitude for her family, who never left her side. Gratitude for the strangers who had saved her life on that beach. And gratitude for her faith, which had carried her through the darkest moments. I thank God every day, Elizabeth said, tears in her eyes. He spared my life, gave me more time with my children, and that's all I could ask for. Back home in Ashland, Virginia, Elizabeth found strength in her faith and her church community at Wynn's Baptist Church. They prayed, they supported, and they raised funds to help cover the mounting medical bills. As Elizabeth began her rehabilitation, she was fitted with a prosthetic hand, a new chapter in her life. It was a strange and difficult adjustment, but one she embraced with the same courage she had shown throughout her entire ordeal. Her children, Laurel, Lila, and Dominic, watched their mother with pride. She was their hero, a warrior who had fought and survived the jaws of death. Her husband, Ryan, who had stood by her side every step of the way, couldn't help but marvel at her strength. Liz is my hero, he said, his voice filled with admiration. She's fought for our family, and we're fighting for her. As Elizabeth's story spread, so did the outpouring of support. From her church community to strangers from around the world, people were inspired by her resilience. Her Instagram account, Elizabeth's Recovery, became a beacon of hope, documenting her journey of healing and the blessings she continued to count, even after all she had endured. In her own words, Elizabeth calls her survival a miracle. I count it as God's miraculous blessing that Ryan and the children were unharmed, that none of my major arteries or vital organs were damaged, and that heroes stepped up at every turn to save my life. For Elizabeth, the attack wasn't just a moment of horror. It was a testament to the power of prayer, the kindness of strangers, and the unwavering strength of family. Months later, Elizabeth had the chance to reunite with the women who had helped save her life on the beach that day. A Zoom call with her 3 heroes. Tears filled her eyes as she thanked them for what they had done. I wouldn't be here without you, she said. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was an emotional reunion, one that solidified the bond between strangers who had come together in the most extraordinary circumstances. Today, Elizabeth Foley stands tall, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Her story is a chilling reminder that even the most beautiful places can hold unimaginable dangers beneath the surface. It shows us that life is unpredictable, that danger can strike when we least expect it. But it also proves that in the darkest moments, hope and resilience can shine through. 2 hours had passed since Elizabeth Foley's attack, but the Gulf of Mexico wasn't done hunting. Just 4 miles down the coast, in the tranquil waters of Grayton Beach, Lulu Gribben, young woman out for a swim, was about to find herself in the jaws of what many believed to be the same deadly predator. Unaware of the chaos that had already unfolded as she waded into the water, she had no way of knowing that her life was about to change forever. As Lulu swam further out, enjoying the warm Gulf waters, the same nightmare that had struck just hours before was about to repeat itself. The shark was there, waiting, watching, preparing to strike. And soon, Lulu Gribben would come face to face with death itself. Our next video is part 2, the harrowing tale of Lulu Gribben, the second swimmer mauled on that fateful day. Hit like and subscribe to continue seeing amazing animal encounter stories from around the world.